along here with Midivani Monroe, and I just want to say thank you for being a guest on my talk show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here with you.
Now, for people who want to know what Uncensored is, Uncensored's my way of showing people that even with a learning disability, I can still overcome controversy and reach my goals in life. At the same time, I'm able to turn myself into a perfect example for people out there dealing with any type of disability, that you should never give up, and you should prove to people you can still mount to something. And it's a half-hour conversation. You can say anything you want. If there's subjects you would like to talk about, you can call me an asshole if I messed up your first name. But, it's completely whatever you want to do. It's your time.
No, not a problem with my name, because it's a difficult name. It's actually Midivani.
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 No disrespect. It makes it worse when I have a learning disability.
Yes, I know.
Sorry about that.
No problem. All technical issues always happen.
Now, I was going to say, it's a half hour. You have as much time as you like. Say anything you like. You talk about anything you want. This is your time. So, starting off, what can you tell us about yourself?
I'm a crazy New Yorker. I've lived in a lot of different places around the world. Spent a lot of time in Southern California and also in France. But I'm a diehard New Yorker and always come back here. I had a lot of different career paths, and I think that I encourage everybody to always go after their passion. And sometimes that passion can change. It's definitely changed many times in my lifetime.
That's true.
Yeah?
No, I agree with you. I wanted to be a personal assistant for the longest time. When I was in high school, my sophomore year, I wanted to be a personal assistant or roadie because I liked Almost Famous. Almost Famous influenced my life.
Yeah, that's a great film.
Then I wanted to become an actor, but then it was too much money. Then I was like, no, let's do this. This is easier.
Well, I grew up as a performer, acting, and then I got sidetracked into dancing. I studied with a lot of the big schools here in New York, and actually started dancing professionally in my teens. And then I ended up moving more towards acting again, and did stage and some TV pilots and commercials and stuff like that. But then in my early 20s, it was like, okay, I've been doing this since I was a young kid. And I wanted to try something different, so I went to college and became a fashion designer. Worked for companies in Europe, here in New York, and also a very big company in California as well. And enjoyed my time doing that. Still do some freelance work in that field. But then I wanted to come back home to New York again and wanted to try something different. My passion started changing again. And so I ended up doing fashion journalism for the last 5 years. Basically having a photographer video shows or events, interviewing the designers on camera and then editing it all together mostly for the web, but also for some international markets. And that kind of brought me full circle back to acting again, and that's primarily what I'm doing again, is primarily acting. I'm just landed a part in a feature film that we'll be shooting in a month. So very excited about that, and kind of seeing the whole performing thing from a different perspective than I did when I was a kid doing it, and enjoying it once again as well.
I was just acknowledging, no, I agree with you, but I was kind of hypnotized with the design behind you. That's an interesting doorway. I never seen anything like that.
Oh, the doorway behind me? Oh, yeah, That's actually, this is, I love this apartment. It's a 1920s pre-war building in New York, and because of that, it has a lot of those old school touches to it. I feel very much at home here, definitely.
Where from New York do you hail from?
From Manhattan. So yeah, I'm kind of set in my blood here.
I was thinking about moving to the city. How's the rent, if you don't mind me for asking?
Rents are definitely a problem here. You have to really be determined that this is something you want to do, because rents are very, very high here in New York. Not as high as in other places like London, but still very pricey. You really have to make a very focused effort that this is what you're going to do. It's a little different for me because it's just home. I've pretty much lived here most of my life, so it's like when people tell me that they live in other places where, you can get a 3-bedroom for $1,200 or something like that, I'm like, what? You're crazy.
Well, I'm looking for a studio, and maybe if you like, you be my co-host. But I can pay you rent. No, it doesn't work, and just an idea.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that.
Now, the other idea I was gonna ask you was,
I've got a crazy dog, and he wants the attention to be on him all the time. So what I'm basically doing is he is obsessed with his fetch toy. So I'm throwing the fetch toy. That's what's going on.
Well, if your dog wants some airtime, he's more than welcome to. What type of dog do you have?
Come here, Nick. Say hello to everybody. Yeah. This is Nicky. He's a toy poodle. He's a good guy. Yeah.
I have one too. Her name's Fifi.
Fifi? Also a toy poodle?
Miniature.
Miniature. Cool.
My parents were obsessed with poodles for over the years.
Yeah.
There's this one dog I want. I can't think of the name. Actually, there's two of them. It's a medium dog, but it has a big bear body to it. If you look from it from a distance, you would think it's a bear, but it's actually a dog. I have no idea what it is.
That sounds interesting.
I remember I was walking around the park this past summer, and an Asian woman had this. You see those stuffed animals as sheep, the big ones, the big round ones? That was the size of her dog. Yeah, I was like, oh, so it looks like a sheepdog, but it was some kind of name to it, but it was really nice. I've never seen a dog like that before.
Was it a coton?
I think so. I just know it was big, poofy, and it had like a big head to it.
Huh. Yeah, I'm definitely a dog person.
You know, like cats?
I do like cats, but if I have to choose, I definitely choose dog over a cat.
You have any funny dog stories you like to share?
Funny dog stories. Not necessarily funny, but this guy has an unbelievable amount of energy. I can take him on an 8-mile walk, and he walks the entire time. And granted, he only weighs 8 pounds. He's a small guy, but even after 8 hours of walking, he comes home and he still wants to play fetch for like the next 2 hours. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be tired. That was the whole purpose of it. So I'm actually figuring out that perhaps he's built like a Prius car, and then when I walk him like that, it's actually charging his battery instead of wearing him out.
My grandfather, when my grandmother passed away, we went out. My mom and her sisters went out. It's like, well, we can't leave Popper here. That was just what we used to call my grandfather, Popper. We can't leave Popper here by himself. Get a dog. Wait, we just buried his wife, and you want to go out and replace her this fast with a dog? It's like, no, that's not the point. We gotta buy your grandfather a friend. So we got Ben, Ben was a racing dog, because when we got him, he was spray painted number 18 on the side. But he was a beagle, and every time it thundered, basically, one story short is my sister was unhappy here. My grandmother wanted her to live on Long Island to get a starter wife over, and my grandfather didn't know about it, but he said if that's what Mama wanted, that's who I'm gonna honor her wishes. So while they're living together, Ben used to hide outside. There would be times where it would be during the night, and it would be a thunderstorm, and the dog would go, at 4 in the morning. Ben, shut up! I have to get up and work for 2 hours. He would just, I hate it. That time, just a crack of thunder, he would get louder and louder. But it's just funny.
So you live out on the island?
Yeah, I live. Do you ever been to Woodbury Commons?
Woodbury Commons. It sounds familiar.
There's two of them. There's one in Long Island, and there's one near West Point, New York.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. I have family that lives a little bit up near Poughkeepsie, so.
Oh, same here. My brother lives up there.
Yeah.
Are you a wrestling fan, or are you not a wrestling fan?
Wrestling fan? Not really. I haven't really paid attention to it very much. Sports, I was so involved with performing and dancing and stuff growing up that I didn't really pay a lot of attention to sports.
Well, if you're interested, we should hang out sometime.
Yeah, most definitely.
Now, I was looking on your Facebook. I can't look at it on your LinkedIn. Can't look at it now because it's taking up the whole screen. But you said you're a foodie. And now, for people, I heard that expression in Suits. Megan, who plays Rachel, says she's a foodie. Now, what does that even supposed to mean? When you guys only eat fruit?
No. When you say that you're a foodie, that's basically saying somebody that has a great appreciation for food and likes really fine food and trying new things. The only difference between me and most of the foodies I know is that I am 100% vegetarian. So I still like to try all kinds of different things and new things and chefs that create really interesting combinations of flavors and stuff like that. But for me, it has to be vegetarian.
So no cheeseburgers, no hot dogs.
Fake hot dogs and fake cheeseburgers, yes. Like garden burger type hamburgers, and they make what I call not dogs. So,
so you mean like my sister got us all on this bandwagon of veggie burgers?
Yes, I definitely eat veggie burgers.
Now, how did you become an actor, and who influenced you? And are you planning on paying your respects to Leonard Nimoy? I know that sounds weird, but either of us are on family terms with him, but still you pay respects. But
I guess a lot of that depends. A lot of that would depend on when they're actually having some type of memorial or whatever. I'm not even sure. I'd have to find out. It's also new. Where he's going to be buried, etc., to be able to pay your respects to him. I mean, he was definitely a great actor and really made a mark on the profession as well as the cultural conscience of the world. So definitely should pay some type of respect to him. Me becoming an actor, initially, it was something that I think I saw my first play when I was maybe 5 years old, and at that point, I was like set, this is what I want to do. I mean, even at that young of an age. And so I really was career-driven from a very young age, but as I said, it kind of evolved and changed, and I got out of the profession completely. Never thought I would go back into it again either. And then doing all the on-camera video fashion journalism put me back in front of the camera again. And it was about a year and a half ago that a friend of mine recommended me for doing some just background work on a film that was shooting here in New York, because I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild, the Actors Union, and they needed union actors for that, even though I had not done anything with it in years and years and years. But I was like, okay, yeah, sure, why not? And that's kind of like, it kind of snowballed and has continued to snowball, and getting more and more work. And I started studying acting again, which I hadn't done since I was a teenager, and just really enjoying the whole process of it again. It's seeing it from a completely different perspective. Yeah, I think age does that sometimes, and having stepped away from it, it makes you see it differently and appreciate it differently. I'm kind of like New York too. There was so much having grown up here that I just took for granted. And it wasn't until I moved away, I was in California for 8 years at one point, that when I came back, it made me really appreciate a lot of what New York has to offer.
That's true. And it's, you know what people say, if you can make it in New York, you can make it in anywhere.
That's probably true. Probably true, yeah.
Now I have two hard-hitting questions for you, and then I'm going to give the floor over to you, and you can be in charge. The first one I'm going to ask you is, do you remember, and I never asked this to anyone before, so you're going to be the first. Do you remember where you were on 9/11, and do you remember your day on that event?
Yes, I do. I was working at a design company in California, so I was on the West Coast when it happened. And that morning, as I was getting ready for work, a very close friend here in the city called me and said, "Turn on your television, you've got to see what's going on." And I did, and I literally spent that rest of the day just kind of like almost in shock. I was at work, but it was hard just to even process it all. And bizarrely, when most people were trying to get away from the city, my immediate reaction was, I have to go home. I just have to go home. And it took a week before I was able to actually get a flight to come back to the city. And they were actually not even allowing planes to fly with full tanks of gas. So I had to go from California to Las Vegas, from Las Vegas to Salt Lake City, from Salt Lake City to Atlanta, and then Atlanta to New York in order to get here. So it took like an incredible amount of time to get here, but I just really felt like I had to come home and be here. That was probably bizarre, but that was just my reaction to it. It still is a subject that in some levels I have not completely processed. It's still a very painful thing. Even just seeing pictures of
the
World Trade Center, still I almost can't deal with it. So.
Yeah, I apologize if that's a touchy subject.
Oh no, not at all. Not at all.
On that day, I'm a type of person, if I have to die, I want to be a hero. I want to be remembered for making a difference. And that's what I'm doing with the talk show. I always say to people, I always go the extra mile and make a difference in someone's life. No matter how big or small, it's a thought that always counts. I was about, 2001. I'm 27 now. I suck at math, so I'd taken a guess. I think I was about maybe 10, 11 back then. And I remember I walked into the classroom. I got chased out. Yeah, I was in middle school at the time. I walked in the classroom. The teachers were in the corner. One was crying, and I was like, well, what happened? What's going on? It's like, get the hell out of here. Close the door. And the other kid says, why are we standing out here? I don't know. I was chased out. She walked in. She was able to sit down. And it's like, this is bullshit. If she's able to sit down, then I want to sit down. I walked in. It's like, God damn it, Keith, what do we just tell you? Get out of here. And then they came on. It says, everyone report to their own classrooms. I went back in here. This is my classroom. No, go to your home room. And they said, don't go on any computers. And that's when we knew. Yeah, we didn't know what was going on, but then we told us. And basically, that was the 9/11 for us. It was basically Pearl Harbor. It was our Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, true.
But if you look at it, and it's, I don't know, I guess it's kind of because I'm kind of retarded, anyway, if you want to look at it like this, but if Pearl Harbor never happened, I'm kind of happy it did happen, but at the same time, I'm not happy that all those innocent people died. Right. If Pearl Harbor never happened, we would never had an excuse to go into the World War II and interfere. I was gotta go join the war, and that's gotta change the tide, because if Pearl Harbor never happened, we would have been probably be speaking Japanese, German right now.
Well, that was definitely a good impetus for getting America into the war, and of course, lots of people lost their lives, but there was so much bad stuff going on, with the Holocaust and everything else, that the end result for us to have been in the war was definitely a good thing.
The biggest thing, and I want your opinion on this one, and then I'd like to pass it over to you, is do you think I say I miss this guy, and people say, like, how can you say that? He's a dictator, he was a monster. But then it's like, I think, Barack Obama's a fucking disgrace as a president. He's really embarrassing, period, end of story. And people are like, well, what about George Bush? George Bush was a cowboy. And it's like, one of the jokes Robin Williams made for him is, we think Katrina works as Al-Qaeda because they both start with a K, and we're gonna bring Katrina to justice. Yeah, well, why make fun of him when he makes fun of himself? But the biggest mistake Bush ever did was kill Saddam. I miss Saddam. A lot of people are like, how can you say that? Look at everything that's going on right now, and then look at when he was in charge and he was alive. He kept his people on a leash. He made sure he was, crazy, but he was crazy as in, we have an alliance with him, and or friendship with him. We'd rather have someone like that on our side than having his eyes set on us thinking, enemy! But, I miss Saddam. He kept his people under control. And it's like, you kill, just trying to look for an example. If you kill, like, a head snake, then all the other ones, or a bee, or whatever predator you want to think of, a lion or tiger, then all the hyenas are gotta go and defend for themselves. And that's where we had the Arab Spring, that's where we had ISIS came from, and that's where all the other shit. If we never killed Saddam, hypothetically, maybe or maybe not, that wouldn't have been happening. What's your opinion about that? Do you believe in that scenario, or do you think I have my head up my ass?
I wouldn't quite put it that way, but I wouldn't say that I miss Saddam Hussein, even though he was a bad person.
Right.
But that being said, I don't think that us going into, there are a lot of bad people in the world, and I don't think it was our place to go into war, especially when it turns out that the reasons we were going there didn't even exist. It was basically a personal thing for Bush to go in there, and he brought our country into a war that we should not have been in. So, and because of that, as you said, it's true. us having gone in there and done that has brought rise to a lot of these different terrorist organizations that are, causing problems throughout the world now. I still remember when they were talking about going into Iraq and going into war. I just kept saying, "It's don't do it." This is like this is one of those situations where you're never going to be able to get out of it, and if you do get out of it, it's still going to keep being a problem. It's not just an easy answer. Oh, let's go in. We'll get rid of Saddam Hussein, and everything will be perfect. And unfortunately, things just don't work out that way. So while I might not miss Saddam Hussein per se, I don't think that we should have gone into Iraq and been involved in that whole war.
Like when I say I miss him, I don't miss him like a buddy, but I mean I miss the fact that he kept his people under control. That's what I meant.
I understand that. Yeah.
Now, like I said, I'm gonna give it over to you, and you can ask me anything you want and talk about whenever you want. Do you have anything you want to say? You ask me.
You made a comment about Barack Obama.
Yeah.
I don't think I would agree with you on that. I think he's actually doing a very good job as president. I think he's really got a lot of opposition against him, to an extent that I don't think any other president has ever had that kind of opposition against him. Sometimes, and some of it is unrealistic opposition. It's just kind of just being opposed to anything that he does or says, just to be opposed to whatever he does and says. I guess I'm surprised by the amount of resistance and in some ways hatred of him that people have. It really surprises me. I would have hoped that maybe we'd gotten further ahead culturally than that at this point, but I'm not sure. I do think he's doing a decent job for what he's been handed to do.
Right. If you think about it, people did say he didn't know anything about being a president. But I think my problem with him, it's like, and recently he vetoed the pipeline, Canadian pipeline. It's like, well, if we make our own oil, we don't have to worry or have to deal with the people in the Middle East. Or a lot of people say he's a Muslim sympathizer, or, a lot of people say he caters to the blacks or whatever, but it's kind of like, I know what you're saying, like he's doing a good job, and I see it too, but at the same time, it's like, don't do stupid shit. Just do what you...
Well, you talk about a Canadian pipeline, I would actually have to do more research on that, because, just because the end result of having us have more oil, I would have to see what the environmental impact, all of what the leading scientists are saying about the environmental impact of that pipeline, what it's going to do to the environment that pipeline's going through, what are risks of ruptures in pipelines and what it would do to groundwater, etc. I'm not sure what all the... Before I would make a judgment on whether he should or should not have vetoed that, I don't think you can necessarily just go in and say, okay, well, yeah, we need more oil, so let's just do it. I think we need to be more conscious of how it's going to affect everybody and the earth that we live on as well.
That's true. And
I wouldn't be able to give an opinion without doing my research on that.
That's true, and you don't really need oil. Oil is more like a 20th century thing. You have solar power, you have wind power, Hell, you can take the some ocean water and convert it into some kind of power. Or you can, if you really want to get it in a sick kind of way, you can piss into the machine and you can turn your urine into some kind of oil. The point is, you don't need oil. There's other alternatives you can do. But, you know, like I said, people just see dollar signs, so that's basically what it comes down to.
Pretty much so, yes. And as I said, you know, if it can be done, if it can be done safely, and without harming the environment or the lives of the people that it's going to be going through, then I'm all for it. But I would just want to make sure that the environmental impact is not going to be a major problem, and just storm on in and just do it without regard for the future. I think that's that's been a lot of problems and a lot of policies that the United States government has had over the years, is that they don't look at the future, and a lot of times they don't learn from the past either. They just are focused on the now, and not in a good way, which focusing on the now is very important a lot of the times, especially in your daily life. But they don't look ahead to, what are the consequences of what this is going to do?
Right.
You know, when you talk about Iraq, I mean, that's a prime example. Who fueled Saddam Hussein in the beginning? We were anti-Iran, so we were feeding all these weapons and money into Saddam Hussein, and basically put him in the position that he was in to begin with. So it's like, and then going like, well, we don't like what he's doing. It's like, well, but you put him in that position. You didn't think about the future of it. And it's kind of the same with like pipeline and different environmental things. Let's not just think about what the immediate need is. We need to look at the big picture and see what's going to happen in the future and where this is going to lead us in the future.
That's true. And if you look at, you know, there's no perfect country in the world. You know, America has problems. Canada has problems. Germany, so as hell, has problems. You know, Russia, like, it's like, it's like, for a perfect example, say, you or me, say, we had enough of America. Let's go to Canada. I'm almost like Connecticut. Let's go to Canada. Let's go to England. But have you really seen the history of how they treated people? It's really no different, you know. It's
every country has its pluses and minuses. Some have more minuses than pluses. You know, there are a few countries in the world that you know, have severe human rights violations, etc. But you know, when you're talking about, you know, the U.S. and Canada and England and different European countries and some Asian countries, etc., everybody has their pluses and their minuses, and you know, every country has its faults as well as its, you know, great achievements. So, you know, and the U.S. is no different. The U.S. is not going to be perfect. It's such a conglomeration of so many different peoples and cultures, etc., that there's always going to be faults as well as the successes of this country. So.
That's true. And now, just one more two questions on actually before we go. We'll wrap up. And the first one is, do you remember where you were on Hurricane Sandy? And secondly, was Obama taking apart the Army and getting rid of the space shuttles and everything? Do you think that's a big mistake? And while on the subject, have you ever been to the Intrepid?
I was at the Intrepid. It's been a while. I have been to the Intrepid because it is right. It's at one of the piers here in Manhattan. And again, I I would have to look at some of the actual policies as far as Obama's policy of dismantling parts of the army, etc. I think in some ways war has changed so much that we don't necessarily need the types of equipment and manpower that we did in the past necessarily.
No, I agree with you. It's kind of like people say the first war was done on horses. The second war was done with tanks. And now we're on the brink of World War III. That's gotta be all technology war.
It's definitely heading that direction, yeah. And then you asked me about Hurricane Sandy. Yes, I do. I was in California, and I was actually supposed to be flying back the day that Sandy hit, and my flight was canceled. So it was not for another 2 days that I could get back. The friends were sending me pictures from the end of my street. You can look down at the East River, and the East River was actually covering the FDR Drive. It was just water with lampposts sticking out of it. And when I got back, I had several friends that lived below the point where they still didn't have electricity. So I had friends coming up and crashing with me, or coming up to charge their phones, or do stuff like that. Very lucky where I lived that we didn't lose power, as well as we're high enough up that there wasn't any water damage to where I live. So, but it definitely made people think about the future of the city as well, and talking about tides rising, and and what we have to actually do to preserve the city so that it doesn't eventually all go underwater.
That's true. And now, one thing I found out, but I don't know if you know this, but do you know how do you know how the moon was created?
How the moon was created? Not exactly.
Well, what I found out was the moon was a part of the ocean, and something happened where I don't really know all the details, but I just know the moon was part of the ocean. It got thrown up in the air, and that's how the moon's able to control the ocean. I don't know if that's really true, but supposedly that's what happened.
I'll have to look at that. I'll have to look into that and do some research. I don't know about that. I haven't heard that one before.
All right, well, wrapping up, do you have anything you want to say to your fans and listeners?
I'm looking forward to this film that will be coming out. Right now it's called Dan and Carla. We start shooting next month. And it's going to be a very interesting film, and I hope you'll all come out and support it.